Okay, now we're going to mount the tail wheel assembly. So I have this piece cut out. It's 2 layers of 1/32 plywood hot glued together. So you can use whatever plywood you have. This seems to work for me. I drilled out the holes that were in the plans, and they correspond to holes in the Sullivan tail wheel assembly. This one is not the exact one that I recommend. The one I recommend is the 10 to 22 pound. This is a slightly smaller one. The difference is the spring is bigger and gives more clearance for a bigger wheel. That's the main thing, because this obviously doesn't need the higher weight rating, it just needs space for a bigger wheel. So use the biggest one that you can get, all listed in the notes with the video. But so that's the tail wheel bracket thing, and I'm going to use the hardware that came with the tail wheel bracket. So, and that eventually it'll all go on like that, and we'll put a skewer in the rudder and a spring will attach to that. So let's mount the hardware onto this piece. So I know that that's going to be the top, so I'm going to put these little things into the back. I'm going to need to pound those in. Okay, so now I think we can hot glue this into the tail. And line it up with the fuselage edges at the end of the fuselage edge. And use plenty of glue here. We want this to be really strong. Okay. Might need to use one more piece of this. These fasteners are sticking out a little bit. I'm going to have to make another one of those and glue it on there. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, now we can attach this. So if everything works out right, the pivot point of this should be right over the pivot point of the rudder. I'm going to add just a little bit of hot glue underneath this as well. attach the put a skewer in the rudder. For the spring, so this spring comes with the tail wheel assembly, and it's going to go right in there, and it's going to need to attach to the rudder, so it'll be like that. So we need to on the plans there's a marker for the angle, for the position of the skewer and the rudder. So I've got a dot here and a dot right here, so I know that it needs to be right in there. So I'm gonna make a hole to begin with. Mark off a little bit. So I'm going to cut it and then I'm going to glue it in there. And this is a thinner skewer, and this is the regular thickness skewer that I've been using everywhere, and this is a little bit thinner one. I just found that the thinner one works fine in this position. You could probably use a big one as well, but it might start to spread the paper apart on the foam board. I'm not sure, so I just use a smaller diameter one. Okay, try it to fit one more time. Looks good. Squeeze some hot glue in there. Push it in quickly so it doesn't start drying while it's sliding in there. And that should be good. Okay. I'm going to attach the spring, and that needs to go that way. So I guess I'll try to make the spring kind of go to the bottom, if possible. Okay, so that's bent, so it won't come out. And then I want to bend a hook on this side so that there's a little bit of tension on it all the time. But not a lot. Seems pretty good. It's not floppy in the center. That's about right. I think I might add a little hot glue to just reinforce where that. Yeah, tiny little bit, just to keep the wire from digging into the foam. I'm gonna cut this off a little bit, trim this. Okay. You might have to do a little bit of bending to make sure that the tail wheel lines up with the rudder when it's all together. That looks like it's off a little bit. Okay, now just add the wheel. The axle hole is quite a bit bigger than this spring, and I would normally put some little tiny tube shims in there to try to fill up that gap, but I'm just going to put it on here. It's not a big deal. And I'm using a 3/32 collar, Dubro on here, and you probably want to put some thread locker on here, but I'm just going to put it on for just to show it. Okay. Okay, now we're going to mount the power pod, and here's my power pod that I've been using. This is a big motor. Here's the layout. Got the ESC at that spot, and the receiver goes back here. And I have this green duct tape and quite a bit of it around here just for extra strength, and that is required. I didn't use very much at one point, and I hit the prop and it just kind of popped off. So make sure that's nice and strong, especially with a motor this big. And I've got a hole through here for the battery connector, and then I've got this other secondary Velcro to hold the battery on. I also have Velcro on stuck to the back of the battery, and it can go on here. So now I'm going to use a similar procedure as with other of the swappables, just for putting these pins into the airplane so that they match the hole. So I'm going to put the power pod into the airplane first, and then push these into the foam. On the plans on the fuselage, you should have a mark, and I marked it with a pin because that's my procedure for transferring the plans to the foam board. So there's a marker, marker right here for a hole for the skewer for the power pod skewer. So I'm going to make that hole on the side. I'm going to put the power pod in the plane. I'm not hooking everything up, just getting it attached. Okay. So it's in there, and the slots are in, so now I can create the holes for the these little skewers. This would be a lot easier if the prop weren't on, but I'm too lazy to take it off right now. Okay, so that's in. Now I need to feed the skewer through the side. There it is. Power pod is in. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is that in the plans I included a way to modify the standard power pod to produce a right and down angle thrust angle, and I think that's pretty important for a motor this big. So make sure you cut the front edge of the power pod according to that. It's pretty simple. Okay, now I'm going to bend the landing gear wire, and I've already cut it to the right length, and I've marked all the bends with a Sharpie, and I have the printout of the plans to go from, so I'm going to measure as I go. So here we go. Okay, I think that's pretty good for the first piece. Okay, now I'm going to bend the second reinforcement piece, so cut it to length and marked all the bends. Okay, I think that's pretty good for reinforcement piece. Now I'll solder them. Okay, now I'm going to bind the two landing gear pieces with copper wire and solder them. So the copper wire is just this thin copper wire, and I took it from some old telephone wire that I had laying around. It's a nice solid wire. It doesn't have the multiple strands, it's just this one. There's multiple strands in here, but each one is individually insulated. But anyway, it's good stuff, cheap. You might have it laying around. Once I get these bound, I'm going to solder it with this. I think this is jeweler solder. It has a little bit of silver in it, but this is awesome stuff. Stay Bright. It solders steel and copper and everything really well, and it has a bottle of flux with it. So that's what I'll use. This is a tip I got from Pat Triddle, or Triddle, I'm not sure how you say his last name, but of Pat's Custom Models. He does good stuff, and so anyway, I learned about this from him. That's what he uses to build his landing gear. Alright, so I'll probably stop talking now and get building. Okay, there it is, landing gear. You should wash off the flux. I use a little soap and water to wash the flux off. It'll cause it to corrode pretty badly if you leave it on there. But other than that, it's time for wheels and to put it in the fuselage. Okay, now we'll just assemble the landing gear. Giant Dave Brown wheels. Okay, now we'll slide the landing gear into the slot. This is probably going to be pretty tight first time. Not too bad. And we need a rubber band. I have all these rubber bands from my sons, and they are awesome rubber bands, the best. This will go around that. There you go. Okay, it's final assembly time, and I wanted to point out that there are markers in the plans for where the CG point is, and I like to put a little piece of electrical tape down there just so there's something to feel, because often when you're lifting the plane and checking CG, you don't want to be looking under there, so you can kind of feel where the piece of tape is. That's where it is. And I usually use 4 rubber bands, 2 crossing and 2 straight ahead. Now I'm going to attach a 2200, 3S 2200 battery under here. Check the CG. And that's pretty good. Slightly nose heavy maybe, but not bad at all. There you go, there's the FoamCub. That's it. Okay, just a little addendum to this video. I maidened this airplane today and it flew great. This is the second one I built, and the first one was the prototype, and then this one was the one you saw me building on this video. I wanted to point out a couple things. One of the differences between this one and the first airplane I built was the control linkages. So as you saw, I have straight control rods and these Dubro Easy connectors. On the first plane, I did Z bends or V bends. I'll show you. This is the first one I built. So you can see that it's just wire and a control horn and control arm and a V-bend, and there was just too much slop in here, and it really affected the way it flew. I mean, I could have been a little bit more careful with the hole sizes and things like that, but really I think the way that I showed you in this video is much better. So I wanted to try to keep in the spirit of flight test and keeping things cheap and simple, and that's why I went with this, but I think it really affects how it flies. So today the maiden proved that using a straight control rod and using the connector on the arm was a good improvement. So this is always an option if you don't want to. Those little connectors are kind of expensive. They're like $1 each. So you can still do this if you want. But anyway, one other thing I wanted to point out that I didn't mention in the main video is that sometimes you need to make a little tiny bend in the control rod, like right here by the servo, so that it meets the angle of the servo a little bit better. So if the rod's coming off and it's going too far at an angle, especially when the rudder's turned down, it's really going to tweak the arm of the servo. So this tiny little bend doesn't look like much, but it's really helping everything out a lot. So I did that on pretty much every control rod, the flaps, ailerons, and everything. So you probably want to do that. Thanks a lot.